Welcome, everyone. We are so grateful that so many members of our community have come out tonight, and as well as our community partners for our first Opening Doors Steering Committee. You'll all have an opportunity to hear this evening about all of the progress we have made since releasing our Opening Doors plan last fall. And we are here tonight because we pledged to make quarterly community updates about our work to the public. We held a meeting in January to share the plan with the community, and now this is our first kind of public update on our progress. I see a lot of familiar faces, but also see some new faces. For those of you that are new to the process, we're going to dive into a bit of the background of the Opening Doors planning before we get started. And we're also going to talk about the national and local context that this plan developed amid. We formed our steering committee to act as an advisory board during our housing study planning process, and we invited our major institutional and nonprofit partners to join us because we can't tackle an issue and a crisis as complex as this alone. So this is a look at some of our partners that you're going to be hearing from tonight who have been working both on the steering committee and to implement the strategies that we all collectively identified as part of the Opening Doors planning process. So we know that some of you have been closely following this, so kind of bear with us as we kind of do a little bit of an overview for those of us that are joining us for the first time. So we are going to, this is an overview of our agenda for the evening. All of the kind of bullet points represent the strategies that were identified during the plan. And then we're going to dive into some exciting new developments that have been proposed and the progress that we've been making. We will be saving time at the end for question and answers, just so you all know. So, here we go with the overview. So, we know that our housing crisis is affecting communities throughout the country. And many of the challenges facing our Bethlehem residents right now are reflecting national trends. There isn't enough housing available to meet demand in the places that are offering folks the most economic opportunity. And rental and sales price increases have far outpaced any increases in income that individuals have experienced over this time period. So we know right now we have the highest percentage of 18 to 29-year-olds living at home since the Great Depression. More than 50% of all renters nationwide are paying more than they can afford on housing, something that's known as being cost burden. In 2020, 45% of all home sales were what were considered affordable. And by 2023, only 16% of those sales nationwide were considered affordable. So if you are not out and participating in the housing market right now, you may not be kind of familiar with what folks who are looking to rent an apartment or buy a house right now are experiencing. But this is really a reality coast to coast and that many people in our community are experiencing right now. It means that it's harder than ever for young generations to establish that first financial foothold. And for young families to find stability in the same neighborhoods where they grew up, where their parents were able to get a start 10, 20 years ago. We've seen communities like out on the West Coast, for example, like San Francisco, that have become just completely unaffordable to workers like teachers and firefighters and other essential employees. This forces them to commute long distance, which increases the traffic and the congestion and the pollution we are all dealing with. And it results in less connected communities. If you are driving an hour and a half each way to work, you're much less likely to be able to volunteer to coach the soccer team at the school where you work. And it means that businesses and institutions in those communities are going to struggle to recruit workers because it's very hard to afford housing in the area. And then that hampers potential economic growth. The good news is we haven't reached that total catastrophe level in Bethlehem. But we are seeing warning signs, and we want to act before that too is our reality. So as we discuss our progress in Bethlehem today, we're building on the lessons learned and best practices from other communities that have been dealing with affordable housing crisis, while also adapting our approach to meet the specific needs and context for our unique Bethlehem neighborhoods. So when we kind of look then to our local reality, the effects are pretty staggering. we saw our median sales price increase from 182,000 in May of 2019 to 302,000 by May of 2023. That is virtually unaffordable for the majority of our existing residents. You really have to be making more than 120% of our area median income to be able to afford to purchase a house in the city of Bethlehem right now. And our median rent jumped to almost $2,000 a month in that same period of time. That left, the next one, the brief chart back there really picturing this, that left 16 of the 20 most commonly held occupations in the Lehigh Valley, leaving residents that hold those jobs unable to afford an apartment of any size in Bethlehem. And we're talking about our home health care workers, our cashiers, our truck drivers, nurses, these fundamental essential workers that are essential to our community's economic success. It's gotten so severe, it's meant that even recent college graduates, like teachers, nurses, to afford housing. So the stark reality of those kind of data points were reflected in the stories that we heard from our residents through the Opening Doors planning process. We heard from a lot of people who deeply, deeply love Bethlehem, but are having trouble seeing a place for themselves in the future of our community. That they're really worried that they're never going to be able to achieve the same sort of things that their relatives and friends and family. And one of kind of the interesting things I got to see a presentation from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission recently, that it's not just that our housing market is changing, it's that our demographics are changing and the composition of our households. We're seeing fewer of those traditional married couple nuclear households and more individuals living alone or in unrelated households, which means we need different kinds of housing to meet the needs of our existing residents and then the population growth that we're projecting, the people that are going to be living in our communities. And it's also resulting in young adults that are struggling to move out or doubling up in apartments because they can only collectively pay these higher rents when they're living together. And so it's actually resulted in the last few years in a 19% increase in households living, with these non-traditional, multi-generational types of households. And as our population is continuing to age, we're anticipating additional demand for housing that reflects a diverse range of family types. So this could be perhaps a grandparent moving in, or a brother and sister living together, or even just people that are roommates in college choosing to stay together. So all of this context is what spurred us in 2022 into action alongside our community partners. All of these organizations in the city at the same time were asking ourselves, how do we best allocate our time and energy to support housing affordability? Elected officials were hearing the struggles in the community and galvanized to take action. And it resulted in City Council voting to launch this plan in May of 2022. And then our departments in City Hall were tasked with working with all of these community organizations with creating a plan to really try to employ every available tool possible to address housing affordability in our community. So as I said, we began that planning process in May of 2022, and we've worked alongside our community partners since then. To form the steering committee, we conducted surveys and pop-up groups. More than 3,500 residents during the planning process share their stories, and we're grateful to them for sharing their struggles and hopes for our city's future. So this kind of resulted all of this collaboration into the plan that we publicly released in the fall of just last year, and now we have started the implementation process. And so we are pretty excited to start kind of sharing our progress. But just kind of the last thing before we dive into this, we can't do this alone. We really, really want to thank our steering committee partners. It's a national and regional crisis. And these institutions both helped us refine these strategies and now are important partners in implementing them. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for their time and resources that you've already and the energy you put behind these plans, and we're grateful for your continued collaboration. We know that residents in our community are struggling right now in feeling real pain, and that this planning process can feel like it's not moving, fast enough. So that's why we are focused on both short-term and long-term strategies. We're really close to creating a new rental assistance program. They will be able to keep folks housed because we know that all of the pandemic-related rental assistance has run out. And we are continuing to operate our housing rehab and first-time home buyers programs. You can learn more about them at the resource table out in the lobby. So those are strategies are in work. It's all underway while we continue to work on these longer-term solutions. And if you think maybe that you could be eligible for them, please come and talk to some of the city staff that are here. So our first kind of strategy that we're going to be diving into is about fostering partnerships. So given our limited blight and vacant land, the Opening Doors Plan recognizes that the city needs to build innovative partnerships to create and preserve new housing options for our residents. So first, tonight, we're going to hear from Carrie Rogel of Lehigh Valley Industrial Park about its amazing, generous donation of land for development in South Bethlehem. And then the city's Director of Planning and Zoning, Darlene Heller, is going to share details on that proposed development. And after that, we'll turn our attention across the river to focus on our ongoing partnership with the Bethlehem Housing Authority. And we'll hear from our Director of Community and Economic Development, Laura Collins.
Let's make that quick. Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Roble. I'm the president of Lehigh Valley Industrial Park. You see by the slide here, we're a private, nonprofit, community-owned economic development corporation started in 1959. You can see our mission here is jobs, diversified industry, and increased tax base. And we're celebrating our 65th anniversary here in 2024. The interesting story is we actually got our start because of strikes here at Bethlehem Stills plant. And the fifth one in 14 years in 1959 lasted for 100 days. And the leaders at the local Bethlehem area Chamber of Commerce, their businesses were being impacted by these strikes. So they determined that there was a need to diversify away from Bethlehem steel. And the way we would do that would be through the creation of business centers known as industrial parks. And there were 18 of these leaders on the board of the Bethlehem area Chamber of Commerce. And they agreed to take the equivalent of about $2 million out of their own pockets to buy 8 parcels of land that became LVIP 1, which is across from the Lehigh Valley International Airport, City Line Avenue, Avenue A, Avenue B, if you're familiar with that. Rex Roth is in there as one of UGI. The new charter school is also an area where F.L. Schmidt used to be. So that's how we got our start. And the city of Bethlehem agreed to build the first road down the City Line Avenue and not be paid until the land was sold. So, actually, it's been a while since I've done this presentation. Let's do this next. Okay. So, today we're working on our 7th industrial park, which is the redevelopment of 1,000 acres of the former Bethlehem steel plant right here in South Bethlehem. Is anybody familiar with our work here on Polk Street out here at Kent, right? And our 7 industrial parks had 500 companies, give 24,000 employees within our park system, and have been involved with about $1.5 billion of private investment. So we've met the vision of our founding fathers, and of course the great irony is that Bethlehem Steel met its demise 20 some odd years ago, correct? And that LVIP was able to survive. So nobody would have put money on that in 1959. The LVIP would have outlived Bethlehem Steel, but that has been the case. Go on, say. What we're working on right now is 1,000 acres that starts just east of the Wind Creek Casino, and our land goes all the way down to I-78. We put this up for dramatic effect. It's black and white. Just the last slide of here, but it's directionally correct. When we bought the land, it looked like this, and basically steel had stripped away most of the topsoil and the grasses, and they had placed slag onto the ground. That was a byproduct of the steel manufacturing process, and this is what we inherited in 2001 timeframe, and this is what it looks like today. So we have 37 businesses operating on 1,000 acres of land. We have 4,300 employees. We have 6.5 million square feet of build out, and we're closing in on $750 million private investment. So this is, it's new jobs, it's new investment, it's new property taxes for the city and for the school district, for the county. And if you remember our mission of creating jobs and diversifying the economy to expand the tax base, that's what LVIP 7 has done from the City of Bethlehem, including LVIP 1. So that's a little bit of our background. And what we're here today to talk to you about is the Salachi property. Is everybody familiar with that at 4th and William? Yes, everybody's familiar with it, right? Salachi. And so basically, we LVIP have been looking, so we've been working on our LVIP 7 for, when we started looking, it was probably 15 years. We enjoyed the challenge of what's called a brownfield site. And a brownfield site is what the Bethlehem steel plant still looks like in many areas, especially down here, which was land that's already been developed, but demolished and need a refurb. And we were looking to do another brownfield project in Lehigh Valley. We looked in Allentown, we looked in Easton, and we just couldn't close the deal on several projects in those cities. But every day I kept driving by the Salachi parcel at 4th and William, and I kept remembering, and came up to see me before the meeting, I kept remembering that the city's plan to turn this parcel into residential development. And I was fortunate that the Salachis had finally reached the retirement age, and they decided to sell their 3.5-acre parcel. There's another parcel next door, which is a 1/2 acre for a dancho, and combined almost 4 acres of land that could fulfill that vision of 2010. Was that what Darlene? About 2010, about residential development on the Salachi and Necho properties. People ask why, and the reason they're asking why is the role that LVIP agreed to play in this was to basically negotiate the agreement of sales with the Salachis and the Dancho property owners, handle environmental remediation. And this slide shows that where the Salachis had a business where they distributed oil to residences. So these were 20,000-gallon tanks that held oil, and their trucks were delivering this every day. So we went in and did the environmental remediation, removing the tanks, removing some associated piping underground, and doing some other remedial work on the site. And with the acquisition and remedial work, our contribution to the project, because we're not looking to be repaid, you're going to donate the Salachi and Dancho properties to the development of now known as the Gateway on 4th, and that's in excess of $4 million that LVIP was making that donations to. And before that was the stumbling block. It was the dollar value that the property owners wanted at this location. So people ask why. Number one, I already went through. It's an opportunity to work on a brownfield site, which is something that we were targeting with our organization. This site is right next to our industrial park, so it borders our most western parcel on 412. And so it's one we wanted to protect, to sort of protect our investment, but again, move strategic value into the city's plans. The legacy in the third pillar, I put in there, number one, I already shared with you, our legacy, basically saving the Bethlehem economy and in the light of losing Bethlehem steel, but then also diversifying the Lehigh Valley economy. I think that's our legacy. The second legacy was starting work on the Bethlehem Steel Tract. Today, everything's flourishing, but when we started working this 23 years ago, the question was, would any business located on a brownfield site procure environmental liability? And so we stepped forward. Others have followed. The Sands followed us, Majestic Realty, and other companies. But LVIP went first and took on more challenging aspects of the site before knowing if people would actually follow us. And then this gratitude I mentioned in the very beginning, when we got our start, was those 18 directors of the Chamber of Commerce who took $2 million. But then the City of Bethlehem took the risk as well to build that first road. So we've never had the opportunity to formally thank the City of Bethlehem, in this brand of a measure, and this provide us an opportunity to use that and say thank you, and pay it forward to what Bethlehem investing in us, and then making our organization a reality some 65 years ago. That's hand this over to Darlene.
Thank you. So I'm Darlene Heller, and I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning for the city. And before I talk about this slide, I'm just going to take a minute to just say it is unbelievable that LVIP would step in and make that kind of commitment. And this section, yes, thank you. It's a huge commitment, and it's just a very gratifying announcement to hear. And this section is about fostering partnerships. So I started working for the city in 2000, and I think Carrie may have started with LVIP at about the same time. And so we have been partnering on the redevelopment of those acres, those brownfield acres, for a while. And before any of that work started, I believe that the Bethlehem Steel site was documented to be the largest brownfield in the United States. And I mean, what a partner, honestly. They've been professional and easy to work with, and we just are very fortunate to have great partnerships in our community, and LVIP is one example of that. So, you know, this is wonderful. We have been working also with, it's changed names a few times, Southside Vision, now it's Southside Tomorrow, and there's subcommittees, and we have been working with some, how can we move forward some of the initiatives of some of our Southside residents, and housing has always been on the list. It's always been a challenge to have a site that's almost 4 acres in the city that could be available for redevelopment at really a gateway location. When you come up 412, it is right there. And so this is a view along 4th Street. We're fortunate that LVIP is working with, I'll say Penrose Development. They're a wonderful developer of both market rate and affordable residential development. They're working with a very reputable architectural design firm, WRT. We've worked with them for components of the steel stack site. So we're just very, very pleased that this is moving forward. So this is the view along 4th Street. If you are familiar with the area at 4th and Williams, there's another site that's under construction there. And on the north side of 4th Street, there's a project that's been approved for development. It hasn't moved forward yet, but they will be moving through the land development process, and then we'll see development at 3 of those 4 corners of that 4th and Williams Street intersection. And it is a very large lot, so it extends back to 5th Street. And we want the development to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. So on 5th Street, there's townhomes that will be developed that match the townhomes on the south side of 5th. So it'll look like mirror development. And it'll be modern design, et cetera, but it'll be very compatible in design. And the property also goes back to the rear and connects to the South Bethlehem Greenway. So it's connected to open space. There'll be, through the design, some additional development of green space on the site. Because of the slopes, they've been put parking underneath the building, which creates additional green space. There's been a lot of thoughtful design that has occurred before the project has moved forward. So we're just very eager to see it move forward, and just very grateful that we have these kinds of partnerships throughout the city. I'm going to turn it over to Laura Collins. Hey.
I'm Laura Collins. I am the Director of Community and Economic Development for the city. And I have the benefit of talking about another great partnership that has come out of the opening doors process. And that is primarily between the city and the Bethlehem Housing Authority. One of the things that really came out during the planning process was the opportunity that we had to further engage with the Bethlehem Housing Authority to support public housing and mixed income housing in creative ways by combining our resources and just putting the time and energy and attention into projects that benefit the city of Bethlehem and housing. And so the first and most exciting project that we're working on together is the Pembroke Choice Neighborhoods project. So Choice Neighborhoods is a federal program. It's from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And some folks at HUD, that's called, some folks at HUD will say that this is probably their most impactful program. It has the most dollars behind it currently to support rehabilitation of public housing. And we applied as the city and the housing authority for one of the Choice Neighborhoods planning grants back in 2023. We were fortunate that we were going through the housing strategy process because we were able to use all that work that we were doing and the demonstration of partnerships and community support and engagement and the data to support an application. And we found out in September of last year that we were awarded a $500,000 grant for this project. We are one of only 14 cities nationwide that was awarded a grant last year. And it comes, not only the money itself, which is incredible, but it comes with a lot of support from HUD to carry out what they deem really like the way of the future in designing public housing, which is mixed income and vibrant and complete communities. So what we'll do over 2 years, which we're already in the middle of at this point, it's not a full year in, but we're a few months into the process. It's planning to take 196 public housing units. 196 units in Pembroke, and to redesign that entire neighborhood with mixed income housing and produce hundreds of new units. So these units were built during World War II, effectively, and I think they were last remodeled about 30 years ago. They are distressed properties, which is what made them eligible for this program. And not only are the properties themselves distressed, but I think many of us who have grown up in Bethlehem understand that the Pembroke Marvine area has often been unnecessarily divided, right? It followed this former model of building public housing that was concentrating poverty and concentrating it at on outer parts of the community, and that is not the way of the future. That is not what creates thriving communities. And through this program, what we can do is plan, along with many partners who are part of the steering committee, plan for a redevelopment that has a mix of housing types and housing that's available at different income levels. That also focuses on 3 areas of development. In addition to housing, it's people and it's neighborhoods. So it's looking at what are the resources for people, whether that's education or healthcare, for example. And what are the resources in the physical neighborhood? Green space and safe transportation routes is one of the big things that has come out already in this planning process. So what we'll do over those 2 years with the community is build a plan for a future redevelopment, and then use that plan to apply for the next phase of grant from HUD for between $35 and $50 million, hopefully, to help support that redevelopment. And it has been already an extremely rewarding process because part of the project also is about empowering people within the community. A large component is identifying community ambassadors to serve as people who can go out into the neighborhood and assess what is it this community needs and how can we support redevelopment that is based on the people who live there, and it's really ground up as opposed to top down. So so far we have held a number of community meetings, and go ahead. We have identified community ambassadors. We held at the Boys and Girls Club a community festival where we engaged over 100 of the local residents to enjoy free music and haircuts and food, of course, cotton candy and hot dogs and all sorts of wonderful things. while also providing input into this plan. So we asked people to describe things in the past that they loved about their neighborhood and what brought them to the neighborhood. Presently, what are the challenges? What are the assets? What are the areas of opportunity? And then looking to the future, what is a vision that people in the community feel we could attain through this process? And we also talked about a potential early action project that'll be completed as well within the next year. So it's a really successful event, and it's just the beginning of the work that we're doing in this process. But we're really hopeful for a great plan coming out of this. And what we'll be doing moving forward is rolling out a resident needs survey, engaging with the residents in Pembroke and in Marvin as well, doing community surveys. We'll be taking members of the Housing Authority and some steering committee members to see other choice neighborhoods communities and how this incredible opportunity has transformed other communities. I think we'll be looking at Camden specifically. We'll be doing a market study and studying housing opportunities, and then, as I mentioned, implementing an early action project. And the benefit is that we're not just doing a plan. We are setting ourselves up with community partners to make improvements to this area of town that has been neglected for quite a while, really regardless of whether we get that next grant. One of the things that came out immediately was it is extremely difficult to cross Pembroke and to cross Stepco, and that it's really detrimental to people who live in the neighborhood, whether it's getting to school or getting to the grocery store or just really feeling connected to the rest of the community. So we're already looking at doing a traffic study and finding ways that we can improve those roadways. Really, that'll go forward with or without, a future grant. But we're obviously hopeful for the future grant as well. But it's been a really great early demonstration of the partnership between the city and Housing Authority and great steering committee members and Councilwoman Kwiatek, who's our Housing Authority liaison and a member of the steering committee. It's been a really excellent process so far, and we're proud to announce those advancements so far. So I think that rounds out our section on partnerships, and we're next going to I'm going to invite some other folks up to talk about the next strategy, which is accessory dwelling units, exploring legalizing accessory dwelling units, and also the Alley House pilot project. So to talk about that, I think Sarah will do some introductions, and we'll also have Wes Hyatt from Lehigh University and Karen Bexley as well from Daytime.
Hi. I realized I don't know that I introduced myself at the beginning. I'm Sarah Satullo. I'm Deputy Director of Community Development, and I've been kind of the project manager for the opening doors planning process, and now for the implementation. And I'm excited to have our friends from Lehigh with us. But kind of first, I'd like to kind of walk us through just kind of some high-level concepts. Has anybody here ever heard of an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU? Raise your hand. Okay, all right. We're starting with a pretty good knowledge base. Maybe some of you have been reading the news lately. You may have, if you have not heard them, you may have heard them by kind of some other names, like a granny flat, an in-law suite, or an apartment over a garage. They're small, self-contained housing units. They can either be attached to a house or they can be separate, but they're all located on like the same piece of land. And later tonight, you're going to hear from Wes and Karen about alley houses, which are a specific type of standalone ADU that can be found all over the city of Bethlehem. Actually, more about that. Sorry, switch slides there. So this is actually an infographic from the AARP. We have seen that nationally ADUs have been growing in popularity amid a movement to revisit some of the unintended consequences of our zoning laws. ADUs can traditionally be built a lot more affordably due to their smaller, more flexible size and construction, and the fact that you often don't have to purchase land to be able to build an ADU. And the AARP has become such a huge proponent of them because they give seniors ways to age in place. They offer families more options for multi-generational living. If you remember, as we were talking about earlier, we've seen a huge rise in the Lehigh Valley with people interested living in non-traditional family units. And they will offer also property owners just with sources of rental income, especially during retirement. So we actually have hundreds of existing alley houses across the city of Bethlehem. And many of them were built in response to our earlier housing crisis, spurred by the demands of Bethlehem Steel during our world wars. And the advent of modern zoning in the city of Bethlehem made it not allowed to build these standalone ADUs. So we are looking as a city to explore how ADUs could fit into our overall housing strategy plan. And so maybe you're asking yourselves, why is an organization like the AARP creating a national toolkit around ADUs and compiling research and best practices? We know that over the next decade, that adults over 65 will outnumber children under 18 for the first time in U.S. history. And the majority of seniors, when surveyed, say that they want to age in place. They want to stay in their homes. And we also know that the rising housing costs that we talked about earlier mean that many young adults are struggling to move out of their parents' houses and launch into the independent living that is often kind of characterized by our advent into adulthood, moving into your first apartment and then hopefully buying your first house. And nationally, ADUs have proven to be a great solution to these growing national affordable housing woes. So we are interested in exploring and researching how this solution could work in Bethlehem in compatibility with our existing neighborhoods where we know that they are already existing. So, kind of what's next on this broader exploration? The city is beginning to study legalizing ADUs by looking at national best practices, and through this innovative pilot partnership you're going to hear more about next. Any potential zoning changes would have to go through a very public and prescribed process, and we are nowhere close to that yet. This will include work by a technical advisor, community meetings, and then votes by both the City Planning Commission and Bethlehem City Council, which would be doing that in the context of a public meeting. So this conversation is really kind of just getting started with our community about the viability of ADUs, and I'd really encourage you. We were having a sign-in up there where you could sign up for future updates about other meetings. So if you want to stay in the loop on the process, please give us your email. We promise we won't spam you. We'll just let you know when the next meeting is. And as I had kind of said, like alley houses are an ADU that we know is commonly found in many neighborhoods. And we know that from a lot of the research that Wes and Karen have done so far, they're really a love type of housing. So an innovative partnership between the city, Lehigh University, Community Action Lehigh Valley, Community Action Development Bethlehem, and New Bethany Inc. Is going to pilot creating one to help inform the city's studies of ADUs. So I'm going to turn it over here to Wes Hyatt and Karen Beck-Cooley to talk to us a little bit about what that pilot is going to look like.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wes Hyatt. I'm an assistant professor of architecture at Lehigh University, also an architect myself, and I'll show that.
Karen Beck-Cooley, I'm a professor of practice at Lehigh. I also wear a couple other hats to Bethlehem. I'm a resident of West Bethlehem, not far from Alley House photo that you got to see there, and I also sit on the school board.
Yeah, so as Sarah mentioned, the Alley House, has anyone seen one of those around the neighborhood? Just like a show of influence, right? Yeah, they're everywhere, right? And something that we're actually doing this summer is trying to catalog every single alley house like this. So when we say like they're everywhere, we can just say, oh, they're everywhere. They're near town. So anyway, that's something we're working on. But it's important to say that because we recognize that sometimes acronyms like ADU can be a little like, well, what's that? It's scary, right? But the alley house is something that is deeply rooted in our community, and you probably know someone that lives in them, right? We're just proposing to do more of them, right? And that's where this pilot project comes in. We're proposing to do one more and to evaluate how exactly that may work within the community or work with them the kind of financing and renting ideas that you're working with our partners, Action, City of Bethlehem. And again, as Sarah said, we're just doing this one, and this process is going to take a while. There we go. Here's just again, the kind of group of partners that was mentioned earlier, and the folks that are kind of working on this throughout all of our organizations. And just to kind of update everyone, because I'm sure some of us have seen this in the news, funding updates that have happened since January in the West, and Matt will talk about this project in this venue. Two really big and exciting awards were awarded to us through the federal government. The first being through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. There's a research grant to support kind of broad kind of overview and analysis of ADUs and how they might exist in Bethlehem, and also studying how other small cities similar to Bethlehem in their character and size have implemented these reforms in the past, right? So we're hoping to learn from what other folks have done and have that inform our own kind of experience here. The second grant, which is for $850,000 in congressionally directed spending / community projects funding, that was awarded with support from our congressional leadership, Representative Susan Wild, Senator Bob Casey, and Senator John Fetterman. And that grant will support the kind of pilot project, which I'll talk about in a minute. We're actually going to build one of these accessory dwelling units in West Bethlehem, and also support other related programmatic efforts, and kind of help us evaluate the construction of the pilot project to see, does this work and how could it be done? So project activities since January, we've had these community meetings. We had one last week, and a few others at West Bethlehem, at Mitchell Middle School, and over the next 6 months, we plan to have many more. So if you love this, please come and see what we're up to. The pilot project, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be building one in West Bethlehem, and the variance required for that pilot project here was approved by the zoning hearing board last month, which we're super excited about because that lets us pilot our work and figure out exactly the best solution will be sort of long term. Here's the site of this pilot project will be on Broad Street in West Bethlehem. The homeowners will continue to live in the street-facing house, and that yours is a little bit off right there. No, it's okay. The homeowners will continue to live in the street-facing house where they currently reside. The existing garage will be torn down. All the parking will be replaced. That's very important. Plus one, actually. And that new alley house unit will be a 2-bedroom, about 740 square foot apartment with 3 parking spaces on the rear facing Raspberry Street, which is second bay now. It's really cheap. And the affordability commitments and tenant management services within that govern that alley house will be provided by Ashley and Bethany. So we're really trying to think of this kind of holistic program, not only on the kind of zoning and design and construction side, but also how these things are managed affordable long term. So, should I?
Just to briefly explain that there are 2 funding sources or funding updates that have come in. The resources provided for the pilot project, which is helping literally construct this model, sort of current day alley house. But the top one from Housing and Urban Development, the same federal department that's supporting our work in the choice neighborhoods over in Pembroke, is all money to spend researching best practices, reaching out to the community, thinking about sort of ways in which the city's current rules and regulations already make this possible, need to be tweaked to make what the city really wants possible. And so just to stress that in addition to the project being sort of a real life 3D model that we can all interact with to see what we like and don't like and how it worked at every step of the way, we have these additional resources to support even more community dialogues, feedback. And
research that includes visiting comparable places to see what they've done, and to seek their advice for what we can do or stay here. But just, a really great opportunity that, again, much like the Pembroke example, came from the housing strategy that the city had in place. We were able to say to HUD, here's all the good work that's underway. Here's what we know so far, but we should love your help to flesh out even more and to really fill this out and do this right. And that's very much what these sources of funding so far.
And just one final note, I know I breezed through this slide, but just in the spirit of this whole meeting about partnerships, like none of this would be possible without all the people here and like hundreds more. So thank you. Thank everybody for all of this.
That's something about the
Sure, yeah. So just very quickly, we can get into the pilot program roles here. So of course, the City of Bethlehem is instrumental in helping us think about zoning policy reform and community engagement efforts. Community Action Lehigh Valley and Community Action Development Bethlehem are helping us think about both the community engagement piece, the community engagement, but also partnering with the pilot project construction, as well as the kind of long-term management of the property. The idea for University, where we are based, are leading the zoning research piece, and then of course the design and aiding the construction portion of the project. That's what you saw with the kind of funding that we're doing this now. And if Bethany is partnering to provide property owners rather than tenant and selection services for the program. So really leveraging their expertise through all the programs they currently run to make sure that the folks living in there are in the pilot unit are right ones and well taken care of. There's a funny. Wow.
And one of the kind of neat things about the funding that we have received through these grants and through the partnerships is that we do have a guarantee of more than 15 years of affordability on the unit, and the owner of the home is going to continue to live there while that is rented on the back of their property. And they actually have an eventual goal of actually moving into the alley house in their retirement, and then renting out their primary house, current primary house for a source of income. So kind of tying back into some of those national trends and the long-term planning goals of the couple that have volunteered for the pilot program. So kind of our next bucket of strategies, if you will, is going to be looking at eviction prevention and rental assistance.
No questions.
So we know that this, as we kind of had talked about earlier, with the housing crisis means that more of our neighbors than ever are struggling with housing instability. Sometimes this is the first time that anybody has experienced this. When you're pairing both rising housing costs, utility costs, inflation together, it just means that an increasing number of people are unexpected car breakdown or medical bill away from potentially missing a rent payment. And rising housing costs means that then more people in our community are unstably housed, and we see the effects of that in our school system and transiency rates with kids struggling. And it also is leading to a corresponding increase in homelessness in our community. A federal report in 2020 found that for every $100 increase in the median rent, there is a corresponding 9% increase in the rate of homelessness in a community. And as we had talked about earlier, our median rents have jumped by more than $500. So this is why Opening Doors recommends investing in rental assistance and eviction mediation and access to counsel as actually a homelessness and displacement prevention. And there are really kind of key strategies of like the stuff that we're hoping to get started right away. And we have built out what we're kind of dubbing perhaps the Housing Stability Cooperative with nonprofit partners who, throughout our study process, in response to things that they were seeing in the pandemic, started developing individual programs that we are now trying to unite into an eviction prevention pipeline that ultimately keeps more folks safely housed and connects them to the resources that they need. So next you're going to be hearing from Community Action Development Bethlehem and North Penn Legal Services about these efforts. New Bethany is a very important partner in this. Unfortunately, they had a board meeting tonight and could not join us, and actually some of our steering committee members also serve on their board. That was why Carrie had to run over there. But we are so grateful that New Bethany has agreed to continue a service that they started during the pandemic, which is qualifying and distributing emergency rental assistance. When the pandemic, came, they built their eviction emergency rental assistance program from the ground up, and they really were doing it in real time, troubleshooting and building out this staff, and ultimately they distributed more than $11 million of emergency rental payments to individuals in our community. So this new program that we're developing and very close to finalizing is taking the lessons from all of the work that they did during the pandemic and instituting the best practices, lessons learned to connect folks with both the financial help and the case management to ensure that we're not just paying their rent and in 3 months they're in the same situation that they were. And that may mean that New Bethany is, having a hard conversation with one of their clients and saying, I don't think you can afford this. Let's find you somewhere else that more aligns with your budget, or what can we connect you with, or do you qualify for another service that could help supplement your income? So I'm going to turn things over to Andy Smith, who's Director at Community Action Development Bethlehem, who's going to walk through how the Housing Stability Collaborative will work. And then she will turn it on over to Sarah Andrew, who from North. Oh, sorry, okay. You did 1 second.
Please. Good.
Oh, sorry, I didn't throw that one.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Smith. I work at Community Action Development Bethlehem here right down the street on the south side. And so I'm super excited to share with everyone some of the details of our kind of emerging housing stability collaborative. So as you know, Sarah had said, we know that almost half of our city residents rent their homes. And the opening doors process has taught all of us who participate in it just how vulnerable tenants are to rapid fluctuations in the cost of housing, more so than our homeowners. In a state like Pennsylvania, where rent control is not an option, we don't have just cause eviction, landlords have extensive rights to determine how they price their units and to whom they rent. And so as rental vacancies have all but evaporated in the city, we've seen how challenging it can be to find a new rental unit in Bethlehem, and let alone afford the cost of moving into a new home, which can easily exceed $5,000 these days in Bethlehem between first and last month's rent and security deposit. And I don't know about you, but most folks I know don't have $5,000 lying around to just to move into a new house. And so, one of the most valuable steps that we can take as a nonprofit organization and a member of this collaborative is to try to preserve community and neighborhood stability by investing in keeping families in their homes. We know that keeping kids in their schools and families in their neighborhoods they have chosen to live in and where they want to be and have a sense of community, we know that's a win. But we've also learned through research and conversations, those of us on the nonprofit side who might not engage with landlords all that often, we've learned that most landlords prefer long-term tenants as well. As construction costs have increased across the board, making repairs between tenants is increasingly costly, and most landlords would rather keep their tenants than evict when they have a choice. Most landlords. So in order to keep tenants housed, we are developing this housing stability collaborative that provides support to tenants at any and every stage of potential housing instability. Any point where someone could end up facing an eviction in court, we want to be able to intervene. And so you'll see kind of the full spectrum here of the different areas that we're working on, and then the organizations who are taking the lead on each of these. And I will, emphasize this is we call it no wrong door approach, right? So if you don't know what to do, you could reach out to any of these organizations, and the idea is if we're not the one who is ideal to serve you at this given moment, that we will make that warm handoff to the organization that can provide you the service. And we're all talking to one another and collaborating with each other to ensure that folks are getting access to the exact services they need. So specifically at Community Action Development Bethlehem, the organization where I work, we're developing a tenant advocacy program that will provide tenant education and one-on-one support to ensure that renters know their rights, understand how to ensure that things like repairs are made, landlord-tenant laws are followed, and we'll also be launching a landlord-tenant mediation program this fall, thanks to support, especially from the City of Bethlehem, which is going to allow us to bring a tenant advocate on board at our organization. And so they will provide a neutral mediation process to assist tenants and landlords with resolving disputes before they end up in court. Because we've seen that most landlords wait 2 to 3 months before they head to court to formally evict a tenant for non-payment of rent. And so we regularly hear from tenants who are struggling due to injury or illness, job loss, short-term crisis that has set them back a month or two on rent. And they say, if I just get assistance to get me through this crisis, I know I can get it back on my feet and keep paying my rent. But that can be really, really hard to do when a single month's rent can be, in the neighborhood of $2,000. Once you get behind, it can really be a struggle. So by intervening early in that process, when we're getting those phone calls that we're getting now, and offering assistance, we hope to avoid the disruptions that are caused by eviction and displacement, because we know how traumatic those can be for our families and, of all ages, and especially our kids, uprooted from their schools and thrown into housing instability, that then it can be a real struggle to find a new place to move into, particularly if you want to stay in the Bethlehem community. So we're modeling our program on some similar successful initiatives in the Pocono Mountain United Way. Philadelphia has a very successful landlord-tenant mediation program. York, Pennsylvania. We're not the first to try to do this, and we're looking to learn from the lessons of these organizations and what has made them so successful. And so, as Sarah mentioned, we know that a missed rent payment or two can be hard to cobble together when a family is facing a short-term emergency. So just another shout out for our incredible partners at New Bethany, who put their experience running that pandemic rental assistance program to work in the design of their new program to help us support tenants in bridging that gap to stay in their homes, as well as their case managers who are available to assist with budgeting, access to other resources to ensure that families are able to achieve and maintain that economic stability. And so they're our partners here for the rental assistance and case management component of this kind of spectrum here of services. And so while we're really hoping to provide solutions to as many households as we possibly can before they end up in court with a potential eviction on their record, we know that isn't always the case, that we're able to avoid it. And so we're really fortunate, though, to know that we have our incredible partners in North Penn Legal Services who are working actually right now in the South Side to assist pretty much every tenant facing eviction in one of our district courts here. And so I'm really happy to introduce Sarah Andrew to talk about what North Penn has been doing and looks to do in the future. Sarah is the managing attorney for North Penn's Access to Counsel program.
Thanks. How's it look? Okay. All right, my name is Sarah Andrew. I'm one of the managing attorneys at North Penn Legal Services in the Bethlehem office. North Penn, for those who aren't familiar, we actually cover 20 counties in Pennsylvania. Lehigh and Northampton counties are sort of the southernmost reach. We cover all of northeastern PA. And our office is right on Main Street in Bethlehem, in the same building as the Brew Works and Aardvark on the second floor. So we have 10 attorneys, 10 support staff, and we provide free civil legal services to low-income people. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on is housing law, and that, for the purposes of this conversation, means eviction defense. And it was a pretty wild ride during the pandemic, and one of our incredible partners is the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, and the slides I'm going to show you are from a report that they did that covers from June of 2022 to July of 2023. So the data is a little old at this point, but pulling data from the magisterial district courts is not really an easy process, and it takes a long time to analyze the data. So what I can say is that none of these numbers are lower now than what they were in June of last year. So what this shows is the eviction filings for Northampton County. And I will also say, if you go to the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania website, they have all this information on there in an interactive program that's incredible if you have time to check it out.
What you can see here is that we had a big dip in eviction filings in 2020 because there was a moratorium on filing new eviction cases. Prior, in the second quarter of 2019, it was at 817 eviction filings for that quarter in Northampton County. We are back approaching that level again as of last June. So if you look at the end of the slide, at the second quarter of 2023, we were about 680 filings. What that means is that in Northampton County, on average, approximately 8 renter households face eviction filing daily. So of all the renters in Northampton County, 8 of them could face having eviction filed against them every single day. And Northampton County has, and I'm talking about counties here because that's sort of how the courts are arranged. It does break it down. I'm going to go into zip codes a little bit later. But Northampton County has the 8th highest filing rate among all the 67 Pennsylvania counties. For contrast, Lehigh County has the 3rd highest, and that is the rate of filings. So Northampton County is doing a little bit better than Lehigh County, but 8 is still not great in this context.
What?
All right, this is probably kind of hard to see, but what this is, and I wish the zip codes were on there, and I did myself a little chart so I could tell, but it shows by zip code how many cases are filed on average. So 6 of the 21 zip codes in Northampton County have a higher filing rate than the county average. And those are the darker colored zip codes in the bottom map. And in those zip codes, you're going to find 18015, 18017, possibly 18020. So Bethlehem, the Bethlehem parts of Northampton County face higher eviction filings than the sort of more eastern sections of Northampton County. And this is a little difficult to see, but it does kind of go into detail showing you by zip code where the most filings are. So for the city of Bethlehem, we have those 3 zip codes, 18020, 18015, and 18017. And I'm not sure this is super helpful, but this is the change in the rate of filings. So we have a little bit fewer filings in all those other zip codes from before the pandemic, and 18042, that's Easton, that went up quite a bit after the pandemic. All right, here's what we are doing to address this issue, and this is where North Penn comes in. So in the United States, including Pennsylvania, you might know that people who are being accused of a crime have the right to counsel in court. Okay, that's what public defenders are. They get automatic counsel if they ask for it. There is no such right for people facing civil legal problems, such as evictions. So we're not going to call it the right to counsel program because there is no current right to counsel. In Philadelphia, there is. They have their whole own system. So we don't have it in the rest of the state. So we call it access to counsel. And this is how we have managed to do this. Back in 2022, we had a conversation with a magistrate in Allentown, Linda Vega. She, at that time, had the most filings for Lehigh County. She wanted our involvement to be able to help the tenants who were coming in. So we worked it out with her that we would come, North Penn, our advocates would come, we would do intake, because people have to qualify for our services. We would do intake at the magistrate's office, and she would put all the evictions on one day. So on Tuesdays, we go over to MDJ Vega's office. We let people know we are here. If you're facing eviction and you want help, come in, see if you qualify, and then we'll assign you an advocate. So we have been doing that for close to 2 years now, 1 year and 3 quarters, and have seen a lot of really great results over there. And a lot of other magistrates wanted to get involved in that. We only have so many advocates, and it does stretch our resources pretty thin. But we had a conversation with Judge Nisley, whose office is right, down by 5 points. And she has us coming in on Wednesdays. So her office is actually not the highest number of eviction cases, that would be Judge Engelson. He's sort of over on Stefco Boulevard. But we worked it out with Judge Nisley. She was happy to have us there, so we set up there. And we also were able to partner with United Way and New Bethany and PPL, who PPL did a wonderful thing. They set aside $300,000 for rental assistance. And this is after all of the emergency rental assistance dried up. They set aside $300,000. They called it the PPL Be a Housing Hero program. $150,000 went to Lehigh County. $150,000 went to Northampton County. New Bethany, the United Way helped work this all out, and New Bethany is issuing the rental assistance just as they did in the early days of the pandemic. So down at Judge Nisley, since we have been doing this program, which I think has been since about last September or so, of the $150,000 that they had to give out to tenants facing eviction down there, they've given out $91,000 of it. And with that, they've assisted 36 households. And that comes down to an average of about $3,500 or $2,500 per household. They can give up to $3,500 per household, and that might be 2 months' rent, or it might be rent and some late fees and some unpaid utility payments. And so those funds have enabled 36 households to not have to be evicted because the only issue they had was they were unable to pay the rent. Most eviction cases come up because people owe back rent. A lot of them also come up because it's like the end of the lease term, but as Anna said, landlords are, they would like longer term tenants. If people can pay rent, they would like them to stay if they're good tenants. So usually it's someone is between jobs or they just need a little bit of help for a little bit of time. So the bottom chart shows that most eviction cases involve back rent, and that's where the rental assistance is so important. Where we are involved, on the other slide I have here. Okay, and let's see where else I have. Okay, this is the last one. So where we are involved, we have been able to get good results because we can connect people to rental assistance, but also because many tenants don't know what their rights are, and they are not able to sit in court and say, well, the landlord didn't necessarily prove what is going on here. More people don't have access to their leases, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So the attorneys and advocates that are there help make sure that the correct due process is followed, that people are, getting access to their rights that they're entitled to. And what that means is we've been able to work out a lot more settled agreements, and we get a lot more judgments that are called pay and stay judgments, which means, okay, you're getting an eviction judgment, but if you can come up with the money for this, then the eviction will not happen. And rental assistance, again, helps with that. So we are very much looking forward to continuing this partnership. We are always available to give, to have people call us for advice or information about landlord-tenant law. So it's not just us representing in court, but we are a good resource for anyone who wants to learn more about it. All right?
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm not even going to sit down. I'm going to be so succinct talking about the strategy of regional planning and advocacy, which is an important one and one that we have gotten started on and are continuing. As it relates to regional planning, I think we know that Bethlehem alone cannot solve the housing crisis. We cannot build our way out. We also know that we cannot change on our own some of these existing barriers that we face, whether it's not being able to control rent or specifically, which I'll talk about in terms of advocacy, helping folks who have faced eviction not have that eviction impact their future opportunities to get housing. And that's where regional planning or advocacy can come in. Just one thing to note that is happening regionally, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission is undertaking a housing supply and attainability strategy for the Lehigh Valley, which we are happy to support as they are looking to partner with the Federal Reserve and Urban Land Institute to think about housing supply at a regional level. The City of Bethlehem is also working with the mayors of Allentown and Easton. Mayor Reynolds started the Three City Coalition, which tackles issues that don't necessarily have municipal boundaries, of which housing is one. Housing, homelessness, climate action, and sustainability are all issues that impact these three cities and also the surrounding municipalities. But by working together, we recognize that we have a greater impact and can also think strategically about where we fit as a city within the broader context of the Lehigh Valley region. So we're continuing those efforts. And as it relates to advocacy, we're often tracking and supporting when appropriate various initiatives, whether it's through our participation in the Lehigh Valley RAB or in other conversations and strategy sessions, thinking about ways to advance funding for programs like FAIR or whole homes repair, fighting blight, reforming land use, or limiting access, as I mentioned, to eviction records, which is just one particularly interesting legislative push that we're seeing right now, which, based on this conversation that we were just having about the data and the statistics around eviction coming out of the pandemic, the number of people who face eviction filings, whether or not they are successful or not, that action alone can impact somebody's ability to get housing in the future. And, in the same way that Pennsylvania was able to lead the country in sealing minor criminal records and has had great success in that, in promoting, individuals to have opportunity in employment and housing. That can serve as a model in Pennsylvania as well, as it relates to eviction records. So that's just one interesting piece of legislation that is moving and that people are talking about. So that is all I have on the strategy of regional planning and advocacy.
Very succinct, but I promise we're coming right to the end here. So just kind of the last thing that I really wanted, I know a lot of our conversation tonight has been focused on rental housing. And that's both because it's an acute community need, but also because the city really had no programs for renters before we went through this process. But while this work is ongoing, we are continuing to offer extensive programs for homeowners in the city. They're aimed at keeping senior citizens and our lower income residents in their homes in the face of rising costs. This is kind of a quote that I often kind of bring out, but it speaks to so much of what we've talked about tonight. It is from a long-term, from a perspective of cost and stability and neighborhood health and community health. It is much better to keep someone in the house that they are in right now than having them be forced to move for reasons other than the fact that they would like to move and they've found a new house that better fits their family's needs. So all of the strategies are kind of aimed at stably keeping our residents housed, but especially these programs for homeowners that we know that they want to stay in their homes and we want to support them to be able to. As a historic city and in an older East Coast state, the City of Bethlehem has very old housing stock. And we know that 70% of our almost 1,400 low-income homeowner households are cost burden. And that's what makes our existing housing rehab and Lead and Healthy Homes programs through our Health Bureau so important. Last year, we did 40 homes that we were able to keep homeowners safely housed in their homes and providing both exterior and interior home renovations. If you are struggling with home repairs today, we do have programs that could help you, and we'd love for you to come and talk to our staff after the meeting. We also offer a first-time home buyers program that helps qualify buyers with down payment and closing cost assistance. And folks, it's administered in partnership with Community Action Lehigh Valley. And they also go through first a financial class to prepare them for home ownership. What are the things that you need to have in order? Do you need to do credit repair and restoration? And for a little while during the pandemic, we had more than 100 people complete that program and not a single closing. Because that housing market has just been so tough for that first-time home buyer to find entry into the market. Really excited. At the end of last year, we have seen 4 closings in recent months. We are hoping that trend is going to continue. But you can learn more about these and other programs at our resource table. But we are also working on creating new types of home ownership opportunities in our community. We work with both Community Action Lehigh Valley and Habitat for Humanity to create home ownership opportunities for qualified buyers. And this gives individuals a chance at owning their own home, building that generational wealth that is only so much of the foundation of our society. And these projects come with extended periods of affordability. So you're seeing these are some recently completed beautiful townhomes on William Street that the city invested $300,000 into, and they were recently completed. And just like 2 weeks ago, Astound was actually in the Lehigh Valley to kick off a national campaign of investing in housing, and they're partnering with Habitat, and they chose to come to South Bethlehem and come to these property on Polk Street. They were out for a build and framing day, and they're going to be sharing kind of this project nationwide as they launch this year-long process where they're going to go, I think, to 20 plus Habitat sites across the country to build houses. So 2 are nearing completion. And then these other 2 right next door on Polk Street that the city intends we're going to be investing more funding into those. So those are just like 4 recent home ownership opportunities for low-income new home buyers that we've come online, and we are getting close to a house on Broadway that we've been working on with Community Action. So while we're working on these wider strategies, I see Chuck back there, that's been said, baby. We're also continuing these programs that have been existing for a long time. So I want to thank you for all of your patience with us as we were going through a lot of information. As you can see, we've been pretty busy. For our kind of next steps, we are going to be having that Choice Neighborhoods field trip that Laura mentioned, and we're going to have it open. We definitely want to get both residents and community partners to come along and kind of see the possibilities that can happen through the Choice Neighborhood planning process and then an implementation grant. So if you want to be informed about future meetings, those efforts, as I said, please sign up for our mailing list. And we are committed to doing these quarterly, so our next update will be in September once we kind of get through the summer vacation season. So thank you for all of your patience and your interest. You've been a great audience, and we are,